royal family and any future monarch has. And it's something that is very important, and I take duty very seriously. I take my responsibilities very seriously.
Under the impeccably mowed grass of Windsor Castle, the elaborately choreographed royal spectacle took place on a tranquil Sunday afternoon, bringing together young princes and princesses from two lines of the royal family, and their courtiers designated it a strategic exercise in familial relations. Prince George was one of the youngest guests, and the look on his face and behavior were increasingly indicating that he was destined for kingship. But on that afternoon, a shift occurred. There was something brewing despite this royal group's historic connection and knowledge of the royal traditions, and that brewing changed the benign gathering into an unexpected moment of fate: the incident at Windsor Castle. What began as an innocent gathering with cousins and a couple of step-cousins soon deteriorated into something less amicable. The corridors of the palace soon reverberated with precious whispers of rumors. Prince George was being bullied by one of Camilla's grandsons. This young alleged bully was not yet distinctly recognized as a titled royal, since he was closely related to the family of Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla had been secretly lobbying for her family to gain enhanced visibility behind the doors of the palace for some increased exposure. She also requested that they receive lesser titles, the best education, ceremonial and symbolic duties to tie them to royal life, and other obligations. Whereas some members of the royal household believe, privately, that Camilla had gone too far and was being presumptuous, most others chose to just remain political and apathetic. Then, the entire scene changed. When Prince George returned home, he was in tears. Kate Middleton eventually noticed the signs: moist eyes, sad and hunched body language, attitude. She asked George what had happened. He told her exactly what happened without hesitation. The reportedly bullying had progressed from antagonism typical of kids to deliberate and purposeful bullying behavior. In the palace, the future King George was being clownish about his future role as monarch, his personality, the family he came from, and even his deceased grandmother, Diana. Kate's immediate response was one of rage, and William was heartbroken. Events inside the royal palace proceeded with blinding speed. Prince William made a decision that would echo through the annals of royal history. Camilla's grandchild, who was once ascribed an honorary role in the royal family, would be cut out from any consideration for title. The palace was unequivocal. There would be no further discussion, no graceful introduction into royal life, and no second chances. The palace did not want to comment to the media, but had a seismic reaction behind palace doors. Camilla was apparently enraged, and Charles was caught in the crossfire between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to the son he loves. The event, constructed as a light feel-good event, one of those synthetic royal family days where the royals remind the media and people of their shared family experiences under the formal attire, was conceived by King Charles with the intention of addressing the fissures that remained amongst family ties. He wanted Prince William's kids to mix with Camilla's grandchildren in an informal event, thus setting the tone for a stronger family relationship. The Queen Consort, eager to get her line in the royal limelight, unreservedly supported the idea, seeing the outing as anything but a picnic. It was an overt move to get her family out front, to have them seen, to be noticed and accepted. Not everyone was as enthused. Royal insiders later shared that Princess Catherine had qualms about the whole thing from the get-go, despite her well-known diplomatic skills. Insiders maintained she was uncomfortable with the potential of compelled social interactions between her kids, mainly Prince George, and Camilla's more vivacious cousins. After all, George, to be raised with the burden of future crown duties, needed to be taught humility, honor, and duty from the get-go. Camilla's extended family could not be said to demonstrate this. According to several accounts from individuals who were there, George's oldest cousin started the argument by poking fun at George during the games they were playing, and then cackling at his unusual walking style. Another child could be heard asking George whether he thought he was better than everyone else, with references to his silly crown. From there, what initially stated itself as relatively normal childhood teasing suddenly turned serious. Prince George, who was only 11 years of age and has just become a teenager, sought to retreat from the discussions, but was pursued. The jibes became much more venomous and were related entirely to his status as the chosen one. The worst insult of all was from the mummy's boy, which for many within the popular recall of Princess Diana had special significance. The staff moved quickly to the children and separated them, but the damage to feelings had already been inflicted. George, always so well controlled in public engagements, appeared frazzled. Security measures had been prepared under the radar of the media, and he was escorted out of sight by a family bodyguard. When informed of her son's predicament, Catherine found George sobbing in the car. There was a tension for the remainder of the afternoon between forced smiles and awkward conversations. Camilla went back to the hosting task, either unaware or in denial of the full ramifications of the event. The more relevant signal was Catherine's response to it. Her smile was forced, and once they were inside their own apartment, the handshake with Charlotte's was notably firm. After George described the incident in graphic detail, Catherine sat in shock. The bullying wasn't just mean, it was premeditated. It was bullying with the actions of an adult, not just the language, as well as adult feelings. The absolutely most chilling element to Kate was not the nastiness of the children themselves, but the seemingly detached transmission of adult prejudices via indirect language and facial expressions, which suggested that Camilla's grandson was mimicking the words uttered in the home. Prince William debriefed on the spot at bedtime with George, a tired-looking, red-eyed, sulky boy. Prince William slumped silently beside Catherine, telling not only of worry for George, but also knowing the past was repeating itself. For once, he was so cross, he would have had no qualms about physically intervening on behalf of his son. The late hour in Adelaide Cottage felt tense. Prince George had been quiet on the journey back from Balmoral, feeling the effects of his mortified dignity stripped from him as separately, the mistress of the chapel and royal cousins sought to bring the abbey into resentful disrepute. Catherine was right next to him, extending calming maternal comfort with a supporting slap on the back. Once the royal attendees and prying eyes were out of earshot, Kate quietly insisted George speak privately, asking him to describe the entire ordeal to her. From the beginning, his retelling was somewhat tentative, but as he continued to talk to her, he gained confidence. As he explained the word intimidation, it had included boasting about his father's future position as king, insulting jibes about his privileged position, and most worrying of all, referring him back to his memories of Princess Diana. Kate's response, which had gone from her own perfectly placid state of mind to a woman of suppressed fury and not a hot fury, was that of an incredibly, if not furious mother, with a child who had been traumatized emotionally. One senior royal staff told me Kate's response was firm. "That boy will never get near my children again." Kate had suffered being bullied, albeit implicitly, for many years, maintained her dignity through numerous scandals, and observed Camilla's family rise to prominence within the monarchy when she, and not Camilla, was wronged. Kate had simply had enough, one she obviously felt no mother, let alone the future queen, should tolerate. Upon arriving at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine immediately held an emergency meeting with William about recent events. A palace source stated that it was the most emotionally charged conversation between them in years. Still somehow containing her emotions with voices raised or tears, Catherine told William, quite seriously, that she had major concerns. She could empathize with Diana's situation and could see how small incidents could snowball into massive crises. Her only concern was Prince George's safety in a domestic situation. At one particularly heart-wrenching moment in the conversation, it was reported that Catherine told William directly, "You're the heir. Start acting like it." After their discussion, William had understanding and agreement. The very next day, Catherine canceled all engagements she had planned and chose to stay home with George and Charlotte. And she secretly asked palace staff about one big thing. She requested all the files on the incident and asked that they did not downplay or cover it up. Later that day, a short note was sent to King Charles's private secretary. "There has been an incident involving Prince George. The Prince and Princess of Wales wish to meet privately with His Majesty." The audience was taken place within 24 hours. At the course of the audience, while King Charles was sympathetic, Camilla appeared to wave it off as no more than children's quarrels. When asked if there would be any ramifications for her grandson, she pooh-poohed that the children would have likely forgot about it in a week. Catherine's retort was typical understated eloquence. Her face did the talking with a look of resolve, and her grip on George added to the exclamatory shape of her maternal determination. The incident brought Catherine's transformational moment in royal space. She moved her role into a motherly position. She advanced from Princess of Wales to a more simple role, one of motherly protector. For William, moments like this are critical turning points. Throughout his life, he had walked this fine line of duty to fathers and respect for the institution, while living through the haunting memories of his mother's tragic passing. But this concern over his son's well-being was unmistakable. The day after a covert meeting orchestrated by King Charles, William left Kensington Palace and did something that surprised even his most senior aides. Having gathered his senior staff and pacing his private office, he made an unequivocal declaration. Camilla's grandson is not ever getting a royal title. Not now, not ever. This action was very consequential because it was done unilaterally, without first informing Charles or the palace administration. Camilla had been aggressively moving her family toward royal legitimacy for some time, slowly amassing honorary titles and formal recognition. Although it passed relatively unnoticed by the public, William was acutely aware of these matters. The concatenation of George's distress and Camilla's refusal to accept responsibility caused him to recognize a more serious issue. What he saw was an effort to usher Camilla's family into the future of the monarchy. William was horrified at the notion. But how would the royal family respond to William's bold power play? And was this the beginning of a deeper rift between the future king and his father, King Charles? Prince William's firm stand and royal responses were in order. The news of William's move broke quickly. Concerning royal courts, Charles was stunned and spent some time pacing in his own apartment in quiet contemplation as to his son's position. He had expected to simply let the situation blow over and was shocked William's position remained resolute. Normally, being calm and consensus-based, William had drawn an impregnable line. This was not just some established place sentence. To him, it was actually taking a line and making plain rights within the royal establishment. The determined time of appeasing dissent in the name of harmony was gone. The time of appeasing acts of disrespect to Diana or for his children was done for good. He had long tolerated. He was ready to be proactive, as George is now increasingly being put into public situations. He was clear. He would serve as a shield, a lion and a father, before he would be a future king. No child of Camilla's, regardless of the relevance to the throne, would ever wear a royal title while he was king. Queen Camilla was sitting in her drawing room at Clarence House, having afternoon tea, when a senior staff member brought her a formal piece of paper. She was dubious to begin with, and she waved the news away as having been misunderstood. Charles would never let this happen, she said emphatically. But when the whole picture came into view, that William met with the king, face to face, that he wouldn't turn the other cheek, and that a formal record was being made of what had happened, the bitter truth hit home. She trembled as she put down the teacup on the table. "He's gone too far," Camilla said, still furious. "This is personal, vindictive. This isn't justice, it's punishment." Camilla's anxieties stretched well beyond her grandson's misconduct. It stretched to ideas of lineage. Within her marriage to Charles, she had worked tirelessly to make her family royal. Although her children and grandchildren had long been largely excluded from things royal, perceived as outsiders rather than actual members of the royal household, she nevertheless made every attempt to acclimatize them into the royal environment. These appearances in public were staged. You could see the ceremonial walk in processions, the second seat in the sitting room at Jubilee spectacles, as well as an honorary invitation from a school, and stage positions for public exposure. Although informal, it was an attempt to illustrate the honor of her family in the history of the monarchy. Media frenzy and public outrage. After the quiet news spread of a troubling encounter between Camilla's grandson and George, everyone took their attention back on the palace. Tabloids, who wanted to follow some decorum but clearly had sources, suddenly started running inflammatory headlines saying, "Royal rift behind closed doors," and "Heir attacked during a private family gathering." These headline ideas fanned the flames of imagination, and like wildfire, it slowly morphed into Prince George mocked by step-relative, William acting on title ban. Within a few hours, a scandal erupted. Royal blogs and Twitter and Facebook accounts filled with sympathy for George and outrage at Camilla and her entourage. There were thousands of postings, "Good for William. Protect that boy." And "Diana would be proud." Others noted the irony that Camilla, who had been given a hard go for rupturing the royal family, now had a grandson who also had crossed some line and was in Diana's grandson. Hashtag Team George started trending on Twitter as artists uploaded quick sketch of the young prince in an itty-bitty crown with a peaceful look of pride. One of the highly retweeted and highly shared tweets said, "George is more royal at 11 than many adults will ever be. It's not about intellect and it's not about genetics. It's about behavior." Friends who comment on the royal family took notice of this. The hashtag was such a scandal that a former palace press secretary even asserted on a morning news program, "This was Prince William's tipping point. He put politics second and family first, and the public repaid him with massive amounts of goodwill." Behind the palace walls, senior aides to the royal family acknowledged that there had been a significant shift. Camilla had once enjoyed a brief period of cool public approval during the first years of her marriage, especially after the late queen, without fanfare, made strides to acknowledge her place as a queen consort. But the public's mood quickly shifted, and within days of the news about the apes, Camilla was experiencing rapid declines in popularity in a number of public opinion polls, while William and Kate were experiencing record popularity levels. The general public, who were already motivated to avoid defending Kate and her children, suddenly began to see these parents as victims who had won for standing firm against unfair treatment. Within the palace itself, there was broad support for the Wales senior courtiers, many of whom were colleagues of Diana during her life. They also quietly endorsed what William was doing, with one advisor apparently saying, "This is exactly what the monarchy needs: toughness, boundaries, and someone who won't allow tradition to protect bad behavior." Then Kate began to receive letters from parents right across the UK describing their child's unfair treatment and thanks for standing up for hers. Some made her cry. The most moving moment occurred a week later after low-key Sunday church visit. When William, Kate, George, and Charlotte got out of their car, a collective spontaneous clap erupted in the crowd. Not raucous or theatrical, but warm, wise, and civil, intangible and profound. While Prince George did not actually understand it, Kate did. She knelt down, taking his hand and saying something not caught on camera. What the public was doing was clear. They were watching, and they were with him. But was this the start of something more? And how does this feud match with centuries of royal skirmishes that preceded it? Long history of royal feuds. Over the centuries history the British monarchy, there have been many feuds played out in whispers behind gilded doors, after the tradition of supporting a cause faded, and amongst the political burdens of history. This was not an easy sentiment to embrace. It was personal. In his defense of his son, Prince William took a step down an avenue that no one sitting on the throne would ever feel free to go down again. Camilla worked years to shift the public image and quietly create a deeper family connection to the throne and completely rewrite her history, the one she once wanted to dissociate herself from. All of that positioning crumbled in a matter of days, and not because of politics or amorality, but because a child was hurt. The mother and father of the child were not going to be silenced. Kate was uptight but polite. William clearly had his own approach to the circumstance. And George may only be young, but he had won a silent victory, a barnstorming message to his people. His family is with him. The monarchy is a changing institution. Titles will no longer be given away in back rooms. Silence will no longer be the price of peace, and the future of the throne is not based on ceremonies or antiquated ritual, but on integrity, for which Prince William has shown he would battle for at any cost. Camilla, who has silently achieved a higher rise in ceiling than ever, is now more isolated than ever. Her grandson is now not only of the spotlight of royalty, but so are the future possibilities of the Parker Bowles family now removed. The ripple of one moment in time, one chilly confrontation, vibrated through the kingdom like a storm. With the dust still settling, one thing is for sure: a new royal standard has been set. Titles are to be earned, respect earned will be mutual, and there are no do-overs with heirs to the crown. This was not so much a family feud. It was a redefinition of power, with no sword nor speech, but a father's voice and a mother's resolve. The monarchy had changed forever from that moment. And that concludes today's chapter of loyalty, legacy, and the silent battles fought behind palace walls. But what do you think? Was Prince William right to draw the line, or did it go too far? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, thanks for watching.